The Aztecs, who ruled over Mexico from 1345 to 1521, became notorious for practicing human sacrifice during their religious ceremonies. They believed that sacrifice was necessary to maintain the universe, and only the gods had the power to keep it alive. In order to obtain the necessary number of sacrifices, the Aztecs waged what they called flower wars, Xochitlal, against neighboring peoples, with the aim of capturing prisoners rather than defeating them. Throwing a person into the fire, pulling them out before death, and then tearing out their heart. Maintaining in luxury for a year, and then tearing out the heart. Forcing to fight, tearing out the heart, and skinning. These are a few of the Aztec ways of offering human sacrifices. These bloody spectacles were believed to save the world. In the understanding of the peoples of Mesoamerica, including the Aztecs, the world repeatedly came into being and perished, and our current existence is also threatened with destruction, as history may repeat itself. From the beginning of time, there were said to be 5 epochs called suns. Each of these epochs ended in catastrophe. The giants inhabiting the world of the first sun, referred to by the Indians as 4 jaguars, were eaten by jaguars. The second sun, 4 wind, ended with the arrival of a strong wind that destroyed homes and turned the beings inhabiting the world into monkeys. The end of the third sun, 4 rain, came when fire fell from the sky, and the fourth sun, 4 water, was destroyed by a deluge so great that the sky fell to the earth. At the end, the gods created the fifth world, 4 movements, and then gathered in Teotihuacan, which in Nahuatl means place where the gods were created, to bring the sun to life. They lit a fire that burned for 4 years. 2 chosen gods, Nanahuatzin and Tecutziztecatl, prepared to offer themselves as sacrifices to become the new sun. They were to jump into the fire to burn and be reborn as celestial bodies. Tecutziztecatl attempted 4 times, but each time hesitated, terrified of the fire. Then Nanahuatzin, without hesitation, proceeded with the sacrifice and jumped into the fire on his first try. His companion, ashamed of his cowardice, followed him. The gods gathered in Teotihuacan, awaited the appearance of the sun, but they didn't know from which side it would emerge. Finally, Nanahuatzin emerged on the eastern horizon as the sun, and Tecutziztecatl became the moon. Both celestial bodies shone equally bright, which angered the gods. One of them threw a rabbit at the face of the moon, dimming its light. The new sun did not move across the sky, threatening the existence of the world. To enable the sun to move, the gods decided to offer themselves as sacrifices. Their sacrifice had the desired effect, and the world could continue to exist. Of course, this doesn't mean that all Aztec gods were dead. The indigenous people perceived their pantheon differently than, for example, the Greeks and Romans did. Mesoamerican gods could die multiple times, be reborn, and change form. Their myths often existed in several inconsistent or even contradictory versions. The primary, though not the only, purpose of offering human sacrifices was to replicate the ritual performed by the gods at Teotihuacan. If people were to cease feeding the sun with the hearts and blood of sacrifices, the world would face destruction. Therefore, the primary task of a warrior was to capture enemies so that they could be offered as sacrifices. The social status depended on the number of captured opponents. Interestingly, some categories of captives were more valuable than others. Men from the city of Tlaxcalan were especially highly regarded. Captives were brought to the capital of the empire, Tenochtitlan, and treated with respect. They often stayed for some time in the house of the warrior who captured them. Then they were led to the base of the Huitzilopochtli, a huge pyramid located in the city center. Sometimes captives were given alcohol and hallucinogenic substances to alleviate their fate. Then they climbed to the top of the pyramid, where they were laid on the sacrificial stone. 4 priests held the legs and arms of the victim, while the 5th one cut open their chest and tore out the still beating heart. The bodies were thrown down the temple stairs. Parts of the bodies, especially the legs, were sometimes eaten during feasts. A certain comfort for the victims might have been the fact that, according to Aztec mythology, after death, they had the honor of accompanying the sun on its journey from dawn to dusk. The practice of offering bloody sacrifices piqued the interest of Europeans virtually from the moment they set foot in the Aztec Empire. References to traces of these rituals appear in letters written during the conquest by Cortés to Charles V. The monks who arrived in Mexico after the conquest devoted much time to learning about and describing indigenous beliefs. The accounts they left behind confirm the mass offering of human sacrifices in this part of America, much like the painted Indian codices do. However, written sources often differ significantly in terms of the scale of the phenomena discussed. To obtain more specific data, archaeological research is currently being conducted. In 1487, during the reign of the Aztec king Ahuitzotl, a 4-day bloody festival of the Aztecs and a ceremony in honor of the god Huitzilopochtli took place. All sources agree that on that day, a huge number of captives were offered to the gods on 4 altars placed atop the pyramid in Tenochtitlan and 15 others in sacred locations throughout the city. However, the number of sacrifices remains a subject of debate among scholars. It is not precisely known how many people perished during the ceremony in 1487. Diego Duran claimed it was over 80,000, while the Franciscan friar Juan de Torquemada counted 72,344 victims. However, both chroniclers wrote their accounts many years after the appearance of the conquistadors in Mexico, which may suggest that they provided exaggerated data to find moral justifications for the conquest of the Aztecs by Europeans. Researchers conducted a bloodless experiment to determine whether it was possible to kill so many people during the 4-day ceremony. Anthropologist Professor Barry Isaac notes that if each sacrifice took about 2 minutes, 30 men would die on each altar within an hour. Multiplying this number by an estimated 10 hours per day for 4 days and across 19 altars, we get 22,800 victims. One of the problems the Aztecs faced was logistics. They had to bring 20,000 captives to Tenochtitlan and provide them with adequate sleeping quarters and food for several days. Another issue was disposing of the bodies. Even if they were dismembered and divided over 4 days, the Aztecs had to deal with over 1.59 million kilograms of remains. In the 1970s, researcher Michael Harner proposed an interesting hypothesis that cannibalism in Aztec society was a consequence of a lack of protein and fat in the diet. According to him, the population growth in the Valley of Mexico in the 15th century led to a decrease in the number of wild animals that could serve as a source of protein. Additionally, indigenous people did not domesticate any large herbivorous animals. The solution to the protein deficit problem was said to be consuming the bodies of sacrificed captives. However, the hypothesis, though intriguing, was quickly challenged. It was pointed out primarily that the diet of the Valley of Mexico residents was not lacking in fats and proteins. They consumed meat from dozens of species of wild birds, as well as domesticated dogs and turkeys. The enormous Texcoco Lake was a source of fish. Furthermore, some of the city-states conquered by the Aztecs paid tribute in the form of food. Another argument against the mentioned hypothesis is the fact that the peak of human sacrifices, including cannibalistic feasts, occurred immediately after the harvest, when there was no shortage of food. Furthermore, most participants in the feasts where human flesh was served came from the aristocracy, which naturally had access to higher quality food and did not suffer from nutritional deficiencies. Perhaps the most intriguing aspect is the sacrifice for Tezcatlipoca, the powerful and capricious god overseeing divination, war, but also the Aztec rulers. 1 year before the festival dedicated to him, a youth without physical defects, embodying the canon of indigenous beauty, was chosen from among the captives. He was then taught good manners and behaviors typical of aristocrats. For a year, he wandered the city with 8 pages, playing the flute. In this way, by leading a suitable lifestyle and wearing special costumes, he gradually became an Ixiptla, a reservoir of divine energy, the living incarnation of Tezcatlipoca. 20 days before the festival, 4 girls representing goddesses of fertility and abundance joined him. In the following days, receptions were held in his honor. Finally, on the day of the festival, he sailed accompanied by his entourage to a place by the lakeshore where a small temple stood. There, everyone except the 8 pages left him. The captive ascended the temple stairs, breaking his flutes one by one. At the top, priests awaited him, who sacrificed him in the manner described earlier. As a sign of exceptional respect, the body of the Ixiptla was carried, not thrown down the temple stairs. In addition to honoring Tezcatlipoca, this type of sacrifice served another purpose. It represented the ideal of Aztec warrior life. enjoying life but being aware that their destiny was either death in battle or on the sacrificial stone.